Episode 18, Let Your Inner Actor Out. I've lost count of how many times one of my coaching clients told me that they have a story that they know can be really good, that can really help a lot of people. But when they've told it in the past, it didn't work for whatever reason, but they know it's a good story. And they finally came to realize that the story isn't the problem. They just don't know how to tell it. Because they've seen people who tell brilliant stories and they know that they don't know what that is. They don't know what those people are doing. They don't know how to make their story work better, to make it stick. Why do you need your story to stick, to be memorable? Well, maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe I should be asking you this. What stories do you remember? All the presentations you've sat through, all of the hours you've sat in meetings, attended workshops and seminars, gone off to conferences and conventions. What do you remember? Who do you remember? I mean, really, what sticks with you months or years later? Because that's what this is all about. I want you, and I mean this sincerely, this is my whole end game here. I want you to be so effective, so memorable, that people still remember you and your story, your presentation, months and years after you give it, because that's how you get ahead. In whatever way you want to get ahead, in business or outside of business, you can't afford to be forgettable, predictable, ordinary. You can't afford to play it safe with your story if you want to get ahead. And that's why you need to take the time to learn these new skills and storytelling techniques that I'm sharing with you, because they work. They've worked so well for me that I've made a living speaking and telling stories all over the world for the last 30 years, and they will work for you. Welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life 20-minute podcast. I'm your host and story coach, Doug Stevenson. In this podcast series, which is now up to 18 episodes with more to come, I'm going to share with you practical storytelling hacks, techniques, and holistic approaches that will make your stories stick. Stories that sell you and your product or service. Because I want you to hear this. One 5-minute story can change the trajectory of your life, literally. It can put you on the map and make you lots of money. And why do you need money? Because it allows you to live the life you want to live while helping others to live the life they want to live. Now, if you feel that you learned something valuable today, you know what I want you to do. Please click on the follow or subscribe button. So here's a preview of what you'll learn in this episode. How story design makes all the difference in whether your story is memorable or forgettable, whether it works or doesn't work. Number 2, how to convey the emotion of your story with reactions and inner monologue. And lastly, how I learned to stop being nervous by focusing in on myself and what I was saying and doing instead of out to my audience. All right, you ready to go? Got a pen, got a paper, got a recorder, got your brain in gear? Let's get started. Here's the thing. My perspective and approach to storytelling is radically different than some of the other people teaching storytelling because I didn't come from a corporate background. My approach is based on my background in theater. I was an actor from the time I was 19 years old until I left it all behind 16 years later. I acted on stage, in movies and TV, and in TV and radio commercials. I did stand-up comedy and I sang lead in a rock band. I mean, I did it all. During those formative years, I studied method acting and improvisation. I acted in traditional plays like Of Mice and Men and Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I got to be in some really fun musicals like Grease and Three Penny Opera. A lot of what I talk to you about in this podcast series comes from what I learned from being cast in plays, going to rehearsals, and then showing up backstage and making the transition from my day job as a carpenter or a taxi driver or whatever I was doing at the time to getting into character and performing once the lights went down and the play started. I got to tell you, it was an amazing and exciting time in my life. And some of my fondest memories are being part of the whole theater thing, my fellow actors, the directors, the sets and costumes, just the whole experience of being part of a team of people who came together more often than not, with very little money to create the magic that is theater. So what has that got to do with what I'm sharing with you about storytelling? Storytelling in business, at a sales or leadership conference, or in a small meeting? Well, a play or musical is a story. Think about the musical A Chorus Line or Wicked, or more recently, Hamilton, or that classic West Side Story. And when you get to act in a really good play, as I did many times, one that's really well written and constructed, like with Shakespeare, especially when I did The Merchant of Venice and Midsummer Night's Dream, as an actor living inside that play night after night, you start to see how the craft of storytelling, the story design, the interplay of characters and entrances and exits, the drama, the comedy, the good guys and the bad guys, how deliberate story design and construction makes all the difference between a story that works every single night and one that falls apart. Now, the story theater method is my unique and often contrarian contribution to storytelling in business. It's a combination of a number of elements. The first element is story design, the form and structure and sequence of a story. My 9 steps of story structure is the main part of that, and you can learn more about that in episode 3 if you're just joining us here. It's a simple 9-step template for how you can take any story idea and develop it into something cohesive and easy to follow, rather than a story that wanders all over the place and goes off on random tangents. And I know you and I have both done that. So go back and check out episode 3 if you haven't already listened to it. The second element of my story theater method has to do with performance, presentation, how you present the story, how you tell it. And more than that, how you deliver it in such a way that it's more like you're living the story than simply telling it. One of the things that I learned in acting is that you don't just say the lines, you interpret them, you breathe into them. And not only that, you act in between the lines with reactions and inner monologue, the thoughts that take place in the silences between the lines. Now, if you've watched any of my videos on YouTube, like my Oscar story or my Bennett story, you'll see that I use my acting skills in subtle, very subtle, but powerful ways to convey the emotions of the story. I can tell you for a fact, I've done these stories hundreds of times in front of all kinds of audiences, large and small. Nobody once ever came up to me and said, "Is that acting? Are you acting in that story?" No, because it was subtle. It was seamless. It just felt natural. To learn more about how to convey the emotion in your story, go back and listen to episode 12 called Emotion is the Fast Lane to the Brain. Episode 12, Emotion is the Fast Lane to the Brain. Because if you don't feel the emotions in your story and know how to do that, your audience or your listener won't feel anything either. And if they don't feel it, it's not possible for it to be memorable. Emotion is the glue that sticks with them. These presentation and performance skills make your story come alive. The way you can use dramatic silence when you react to the obstacle in your story, how you use changes in tempo and volume to convey emotion. All of these things that come naturally to me from my time in theater are things that you can do as well. And they're not obvious to your audience, to the people watching you tell your story. There's subtle nuances, like the spices you add to your food to give it flavor. These things I'm talking about are subliminal. So here are a couple of acting skills that you can use when you're telling a story. This is how you can let your inner actor out. Number 1, don't just describe reactions, feel them. Don't talk about being frustrated, get frustrated. Okay, I need an example here. Let's see. Instead of telling me that you left your phone at the gym and now you're freaking out, take 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, to make frustrating sounds and gestures. Don't describe your reaction, react. Hey, that's what you do when you're frustrated, right? You don't narrate your frustration, you get frustrated. I mean, all right, just take a second and think about this. If you're frustrated, what do you do? Do you say, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated? Or do you go, oh man, I can't, Do you make sounds? Do you use your arms? Does your body show your frustration? Of course it does. Okay, so here's how you do this. Number 2, add inner monologue to your reaction. So let's just say you got out of your car and you want to check your messages, and now you realize you don't have your phone. You must have left it at the elliptical machine with your water bottle. Now, what do you say to yourself? Just imagine this. What do you say to yourself standing there by your car? Not in proper sentences, in fragments and sounds. It's something like this. So I just got out of the car. I want to check my messages. I realize I can't find my phone. So here's what I do. Oh, no. Come on. Where? Oh, no. Come on. Where are you? Damn it. No, I didn't. Where did I leave it? What was the last thing? Oh man, the elliptical machine. That's where. You idiot. Crap. Gotta go back. Does that sound about right? The fragments of thought, the emotive sounds, and the volume that goes with it. That's inner monologue. And it usually happens right after you encounter the obstacle in your story. So the next time you're telling a story, just take a moment to check it out, look at it and go, where's the obstacle? Where's the moment of frustration or anger or confusion? And then add some inner monologue to your story. What do you say to yourself when nobody's around? You'll usually get a laugh or two because inner monologue is usually pretty private thoughts and private behavior. Okay, and here's the last acting technique I'm going to share with you today. Number 3, add movement and gesture. I don't know about you, but my body moves in harmony with my emotions. I can't express an emotion without moving my arms and my body. So when you're feeling the frustration and you're doing your inner monologue, do the actions of looking for your phone, searching for it, not finding it, moving around, looking here and there, left and right, in your pockets. Because in real life, we move, we gesture, we feel. And the movements and gestures are organically connected to the emotions that we're expressing. So these 3 skills that come from theater and acting are what I call in moments, I-N, in moments. So an in moment is a reenactment of a moment in your story, as if you're back in time when the moment happened. Like the moment you realize you don't have your phone. You don't narrate it and describe it. You act out the moment. You recreate it. That's back in time. And all of the out moments are where you're narrating everything, talking to your audience, looking out at them and telling them your story. Most of your story is out. It's past tense narrative. But those few in moments, oh my goodness. Those short reenactments are so powerful that they make you and your story compelling. They make it feel better because your story is no longer just words, just narrative. Your story becomes a mini play, a story theater piece. You know, something else that's really interesting was when I realized that I was never nervous acting in a play. But for many of my corporate keynotes, I'd get nervous. And all of my insecurities would blow up in my face. And I had to ask myself, why? And one day it hit me. When I was on stage in a play, I was completely focused on my role in the play and in hitting my marks and being in the moment with the other actors in my scenes. And I didn't have to worry about the audience, what they were doing or thinking or how they were responding, because I was busy doing my job. And I let the audience do their job. They were audience. I was an actor in a play. And I made the decision as a speaker to stop focusing so much on what was going on in my audience and to stay within myself, to focus in instead of out, to connect into myself, to what I was saying and doing, instead of trying so hard to connect out to them. I decided to just do my job as the speaker, the storyteller, and let them do their job of being in the audience. With that simple shift, everything started to change for me. I stopped being a codependent speaker and I stepped into my power. I want you to try that. The next time you're in front of an audience, focus in, connect in to yourself on what you're saying and what you're doing and what your intention is. Totally connect to yourself, focus in on yourself, and let them do whatever it is that they're doing. Let them fidget, let them check their phone, let them get up and leave the room, let them look bored. That's their job. Their job is to be them. You focus in on being you, on your power, on what you're there to do. Now, here's something about these acting skills, because you might wonder, how does this work? How does this look? You can watch me in action on YouTube. You can see what I'm talking about and how I use these acting skills while telling my stories. And you'll see that these skills don't look obvious. They look and sound pretty natural, really. And that's what good acting is. You can't see it, but you know it's there. It's invisible. Now, I'm going to put the titles of my YouTube videos in the podcast notes so you can see what I'm talking about. The two videos I'm going to recommend you go to first are my Bennett story and my Oscar story. Now, I want to conclude with this, the third element of my story theater method. And I've covered this before, but it's making your point stick with a phrase that pays. And this is something that I've learned along the way from advertising that I incorporated into my methodology. You can learn more about that in episode 5. And it's one of the most important, if not the most important technique in my story theater method, because the phrase that pays is how you make the point of your story to make it memorable. In every story that I tell, and you've heard me tell a lot of stories in previous episodes, I always end my story with a phrase that pays. Hide the pill in the peanut butter. Pick a date. Get out of the bus. Look for the limo. Now, if you do a good job in crafting and designing your story, deliberately designing your story, and then performing it with a few subtle acting skills, you let your inner actor out, and then you're branding the point with a phrase that pays, you and your story will be memorable and marketable, and you'll make a difference. And you might even change someone's life. All right, that's it for this episode. If you feel that you learned something valuable today, there's 2 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow, subscribe button. And second, share this podcast with 3 people. Help me spread the word about storytelling that sticks. And if you're following me on LinkedIn, and I hope you are, please post a comment whenever I post a promo for a new episode of Storytelling That Sticks. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. And if you want help with your stories, speeches, or TED Talks, please get in touch with me. My email is doug@dougstevenson.com. Thanks for listening. Until next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.